Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this is probably one of the most important debates that this House can have. Sending New Zealanders to war is a decision that should not be taken lightly and should be seen with broad political support. Mr Speaker, on the 18th of March 2003, the then Prime Minister Helen Clark initiated a debate on Iraq. President Bush had just issued his final ultimatum. Diplomatic negotiations had failed. And to correct Mr Brownlee, Labor had supported the UN resolutions in 2003, including Resolution 1441. Helen Clark said at that time, our position on this crisis has all at times been based on our strong support for multilateralism, the rule of law, and upholding the authority of the Security Council. We refused to join the coalition of the willing, and we took a principled decision. It had integrity, and it was understood by our international friends. We were independent and we did not hide behind the club. Mr Speaker, on that same date, in that same debate, Bill English, the Leader of the Opposition, stood and his opening words were, "The National Party will be supporting the coalition of the willing." They were wrong with that decision then, and they are wrong now. The intervention in Iraq, the National Party said at that time that was in the interest of global peace. That did not come to pass, Mr English. They said that the threat posed would mean that the world would be removed if we went to Iraq. That did not come to pass. What we saw was over 10 years of fighting, training Iraqi soldiers, spending $25 billion of US money, and we did not remove the threat to the world. On the 18th of March 2003, the Labor government allowed a vote on the support for the position we had taken. National and AT voted against the Labor government. They voted against it, and they voted in support of the coalition of the willing. And John Key was part of that vote, and he's never resigned from that position. In fact, he said that we were missing in action in Iraq. Labor, New Zealand First, the Greens, United Future and Progressive voted against sending troops to Iraq. So I say to the Prime Minister today, put the vote to the Parliament. Let the Parliament decide. Show the fortitude and ask the people's representatives. All the parties are represented here. Allow us to tell you what we think about the decision to send 143 personnel to Iraq. Show leadership, show courage, show statesmanship, show moral leadership here in this Parliament. And I would say, Mr Speaker, once again, the vote would be National Party and the one little lonely vote from ACT who props up this government. And then I say, Mr Speaker, did the Prime Minister and his Cabinet allow his own caucus to vote on whether they should send troops to Iraq? The answer is no. Do you know when their caucus found out about this decision? After the Australians, after Baghdad, they found out at their caucus this morning. They were told this morning, like cannon fodder, they just go along with the decision. Mr Speaker, this party is in favour of being a good international citizen. We have a track record. We have a highly regarded reputation on the international scene built up over many years. In fact, Mr Speaker, it was that track record that internationally and our reputation that got us onto the Security Council. We were seen to have independent thinking. It won us the support because we said our pitch was peace and security, and we pitched it to the small nations. And I say to the government and Nick Smith, who constantly interjects, what are we going to do differently now? What are we going to do differently under this government with what they are proposing? We're not doing anything different from what we promised the people who voted for us for the Security Council. In fact, we're going down the same old line the National Party has always gone down. John Key said, well, this is paying the price of being part of the club. Is that a good enough reason to commit our troops to Iraq? Dressed up as trainers to train Iraqi soldiers that we've been trying to train for 10 years with no results? Is it good enough to follow the lead of others and not have our own response? No, it is not. To set out other alternatives. Where are the other alternatives? Do you know the total contribution in humanitarian aid to Iraq is $13.5 million? That is less than we were going to spend on the Sky City or having America's Cup. Less than that, and that's what our humanitarian aid has been to Iraq. John Key gave New Zealanders a personal assurance during the election campaign that we would not be involved in sending troops to Iraq. That is 8 months ago, and I have to say, Mr. Speaker, 8 months ago, we knew of the evil of ISIS. We knew what they were doing, how they were spreading their tentacles around the world. He made that promise to New Zealanders back then 8 months ago. And over the months, we've had the dance of the 7 veils by the Prime Minister as he slowly exposed what his real thinking is, softening us up, priming New Zealanders to send troops to Iraq. Mr. Speaker, he said he has been open with New Zealanders. If that is open with New Zealanders, I don't know what openness is. I believe we have been taken as fools by the Prime Minister. I believe Andrew Little when he said this decision was made a long time ago. It would be made in the little meetings, at the little side meetings the Prime Minister has with his club in the so-called coalition. It would have been made as they had little chats after the golf. It would be made in different places where we don't know what's going on, but the nods and the winks were taking place. Mr. Speaker, I think the announcement today has raised more questions than answers. The Prime Minister said we're sending force protection for our troops. Who are the force protection? Where do they come from? How are they going to protect our troops? How many of them are there going to be? He said the SAS were going to be going, only for a short time. What is a short time for the SAS to go? They're going to go when there are high-profile visits, I suppose, of people parading around Iraq and Baghdad. He said well, they're going to be behind the wire. Where is the wire? Where does the wire sit? How do we know if they are behind the wire? He then said it's going to be a 9-month deployment, then a review, and then a 2-year commitment. Then he went on to say in the other breath, but New Zealand's got to be there for a long time. What are we going to be doing? Are we there for 9 months with a review, 2 years, 10 years? We did not get that answer. Mr. Speaker, we believe that we ought to be part of rebuilding Iraq. We ought to be part of ensuring the things that we can do best. What does New Zealand do best? It's not sending 143 personnel to Iraq. It's the things that we have strengths in. We do have strengths in rebuilding. We do have strengths in humanitarian aid. Why are we not sending humanitarian aid to Jordan where all the refugees are flooding and they're having to feed and house them? Why are we not providing that sort of support? Why are we not providing support in terms of medical personnel for those who are wounded and hurt and they need hospital assistance? Why are we not involved in rebuilding that country in the way that we have done in many other countries? But what do we get from this government? We get that they are making a major contribution to their friends by sending 143 personnel to Iraq. We do not believe it is justified. We do not believe the case has been put. We do not believe that we will make an impact, but we could if we looked at other alternatives. They have been blind to other alternatives. They have not put the case.
Mr. Speaker.